We're back on Indonesia Highlights, and I'm still talking to Jim Keedy. And before the break, we talked about his experience coming from the state and actually went to Indonesia and lived on a minimum wage just to experience what the workers are living standards are. That's quite a radical move, as I've mentioned before. Now, Jim, you've been coming in and out of Indonesia for the last 14 years advocating for this underpaid workers. What are the two main demands that laborers are asking?
Sure. In all my time here, and the hundreds and hundreds of workers that I've met with, whether they were in Jakarta, Tangerang, Bekasi, Bogor, Depok, Sukabumi, there are two things that workers want. One, a living wage. And just to give you a benchmark, a living wage is usually 2 to 3 times the minimum wage in the developing country. And the other issue is protecting workers' rights to freely associate. They want their freedom of association that is protected under Indonesian law to be protected and respected. If they do freely associate and they form trade unions, they want the Western brands to sit down and bargain with them in good faith. So traditionally in Indonesia, there are tri-party collective bargaining agreements that are created at the factories. The tri-parties are the trade union, the factory management, and the government. I would encourage the unions to demand a different approach, that the tri-parties should be the trade union, the factory management, and the Western brands. And this is specific to the companies that are producing for US and European and Australian transnationals. Because I think the companies, as an American, I can say that the companies that are sourcing their production here in Indonesia, they're the ones that have the real power. You know, there's the Indonesian, I forget the Indonesian phrase for it, but the translation is, you know, whatever the boss wants, the boss gets.
Right.
And I think in this situation, they need to have the boss at the table. You know, a lot of these Western brands, particularly in the footwear and the apparel sector, have developed codes of conduct. They post them on the wall in the factory. They put them out to investors. It's all over their websites that we are committed to these certain principles. Well, is it lip service or is it reality?
Well,
so live up to
what
it.
did you find in reality, though?
It's lip service.
Right.
You know, there's a company that I have done a lot of work focusing on in the last 14 years that, you know, they've made billions in profits. 2013 is an example. They did $2.5 billion in profits. Yet, a majority of their factories are seeking wage exemptions in Indonesia, saying they can't afford to pay the workers the new minimum wage. That's a lie. They absolutely can afford to pay them that. Now, if they do pay them, it may mean a little less profit for these companies. So be it. If making a marginally less profit means that you could lift hundreds of thousands of workers out of poverty and into the middle class, do it purely because it's the right thing to do. No economic argument, no political argument, just because it's right.
Right, that sounds very idealistic, but how in your advocacy for all these underpaid workers has been successful or not? Or because you did mention to me that a couple of companies are actually exempted from paying the minimum wage.
Sure. Well, there was one case last year where this one company, they were trying to get an exemption out at a factory in Sukabumi. The union refused to sign the agreement. The unions have to sign the agreement saying we will accept less than the minimum wage for our members. To the union's credit, they refused to do it. The factory fought back, started intimidating the union committee members. One was illegally dismissed, and the union still held their ground, again to their credit. Well, what the factory started to do was they brought in guys from the local TNI post to walk around the factory floor with the managers, and they put a paper in front of these young women who were on the factory lines. And, you know, these young women are coming out of farming communities, you know, maybe have a high school education at best, very intimidated by the scenario, and encouraging them to sign this agreement. Well, the workers documented all of this. One of them actually filmed it with their hand phone. They reached out to me. I happened to be in Indonesia in January 2013. We documented all the facts of the case. I brought it back here to Jakarta, partnered with the Trade Union Rights Center, which is an Indonesian-based NGO that does fantastic work on these issues. And we did a big press conference. Particularly the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Company, did a real scathing report on it. And because of the negative press on this Western brand, those workers within 3 days were getting paid the new minimum wage.
I'm going to ask for your opinion when we come back about, okay, should the 10 demand granted, what are kind of things that the labourers can give in returns? Perhaps we can touch base on that, and I'm sure you have opinions on that. So,
absolutely.
Okay, we're going for a short break, and when we do return, we'll find out how Jim have also helped many underpaid factory workers voice their concerns.